The human walked into the alien medical facility like he owned the place. His movements were calm but precise, and every alien in the corridor could not help but notice the confidence radiating from him. The walls were filled with shimmering panels, displaying vitals and holographic scans of every known species in the galaxy, and the humans had always been a curiosity here. Considered fragile by some and primitive by others, they were never taken seriously, especially by the top surgeons who prided themselves on knowing every detail of anatomy across countless worlds. The lead surgeon, a tall being with translucent skin and 3 eyes that constantly shifted focus, glanced at the human with a mix of curiosity and boredom. She had read reports about humans before, and the data said they had no redundant organs. A simple species, with predictable biology, nothing extraordinary could be expected. Yet something about the human's posture made her uneasy. The human was led into the operating chamber, and his eyes scanned the equipment with interest. Not fear, not concern. He did not fidget or question anything. He merely observed. His lungs expanded deeply and evenly, and the subtle rhythm of his heart seemed ordinary, but somehow different. He sat on the examination table while the alien assistants prepared instruments designed to measure every cell, every nerve, and every organ. The lead surgeon moved closer and announced that this would be a routine procedure. She had performed thousands of surgeries, and none had surprised her. She expected to remove or examine a minor organ and move on. Yet as she reached for the first incision, she felt a hesitation in the room. Even the assistants sensed a ripple of tension and exchanged glances, as if the human emitted a quiet warning that no one could quite define as the operation began. The human lay still, but his body seemed to respond in ways that were almost instinctual. The surgeon made her first careful incision and immediately paused. Something inside her mind told her that this was not going to be ordinary. Her instruments touched tissue that was not on any known diagram. She looked at the holographic display, and it confirmed her fear. There was something there that should not exist according to every book, every report, every piece of research she had ever trusted. The alien assistants froze, and the 3-eyed surgeon whispered to herself, questioning whether she had made a mistake in preparation. The human remained calm, his breathing smooth and steady, as if he could feel the astonishment around him but did not need to participate. He had survived conditions on death worlds that no alien could endure, and his body carried secrets forged in environments that demanded adaptation and resilience. The room was silent except for the soft hum of machinery and the occasional click of instruments against the sterile floor. The lead surgeon could not help but feel a mix of fear and awe. She realized that the humans had always been underestimated, their biology dismissed as simple and predictable. Yet here, in front of her, was undeniable proof that humans carried layers of complexity that even the most advanced alien species could not comprehend. Each discovery of tissue that did not belong to any known organ system made her question everything she thought she knew about evolution. She had studied apex predators across dozens of planets, and yet this human carried within him redundancies that allowed him to survive injuries, diseases, and environments that would kill entire fleets of alien explorers. The human's calm gaze met hers for a brief moment, and she could see intelligence and patience that were unfamiliar to her species. He was aware of every movement of every assistant, yet he made no move to intervene. He allowed the alien surgeons to continue their work as if he trusted them completely. But in that trust there was power in that stillness that spoke louder than words. The lead surgeon inhaled deeply and knew that this operation was only the beginning. The secrets within this human would challenge the foundation of biological science in the galaxy, and perhaps even question the assumed hierarchy of species. She looked around at her team and saw reflected astonishment, shock, and a creeping respect. She could feel the tension build, knowing that by the end of this procedure, her understanding of life itself might be forever changed. The human remained motionless, yet there was energy in the room that seemed to pulse from him. His existence was a testament to survival and adaptation. He was proof that the galaxy had overlooked a species capable of far more than anyone had dared to imagine, and as the surgeon carefully continued her work, she realized that today would be remembered not as a routine examination, but as the moment the galaxy began to see humans for what they truly were, The moment the first unexpected organ was discovered, the lead surgeon's heart skipped a beat. She had been through thousands of procedures, but nothing like this had ever happened before. As the alien assistants watched in stunned silence, they could only stare at the holographic scan that blinked back at them in disbelief. The human's body was not what it should have been. This organ, an intricate network of cells that no known species possessed, was unlike anything they had seen before. It seemed to pulse with a faint rhythm of its own, a hidden life force that defied all logic and understanding. The lead surgeon leaned in closer, her fingers hovering over the instruments as she hesitated for just a moment. Could this really be possible? Could a human carry something so extraordinary? The alien assistants looked at one another nervously, the quiet tension growing thick in the room. Of them spoke up, stammering with uncertainty, wondering aloud how the organ could even exist. They all knew humans had a relatively simple anatomy, but this was something completely foreign, something that shouldn't be. There were no records of such an organ in any database, no trace of it in their studies or scans. The surgeon's mind raced as she pulled up every file, every bit of knowledge available to her. Yet nothing in her training had prepared her for this discovery. She carefully examined the strange organ as it appeared to slowly shift its position beneath the surface of the human's skin. She made a delicate incision around it and watched in awe as the tissue shifted and reformed itself, almost as if it was alive, adjusting to the surgical tools without causing any harm or pain to the patient. The human lay completely still, his chest rising and falling evenly, and the faintest of smiles tugging at the corner of his lips, as if he knew exactly what was happening around him. Her hand shook slightly, but she steadied herself quickly. She reached deeper into the tissue, her tools moving through the human's body with a precision that only years of experience could bring. Each layer she uncovered revealed more of the mystery. A second organ appeared, this one even more complex than the last. It seemed to be composed of a unique set of neural connections that should not exist in any species with such a simple design. The surgeon's heart pounded in her chest as the realization hit her. Humans were not what they seemed. They were far more intricate than they had ever imagined. They were not just biologically simple creatures. They were walking marvels of evolution. The assistants gathered around her watching. In stunned silence, their previous skepticism about human biology had vanished completely, replaced by awe and growing uncertainty. The surgeon took a deep breath as she studied the second organ. It was unlike anything she had seen in her career. It wasn't just an organ. It was a weapon, a tool for survival in the most hostile environments imaginable. She had never encountered a species with such a hidden depth of resilience and adaptability. They had all assumed humans were fragile creatures, barely capable of surviving in space, let alone in the brutal conditions of a death world. But now they were learning the truth about humanity's hidden strength. They were learning what humans were truly capable of when faced with death and destruction. As she continued her work, she found more organs, each one more mysterious than the last. Each one defied everything she had known about biology, about the rules that governed life in the galaxy. With each discovery, the surgeon's respect for humanity grew, and along with it a fear that she could no longer ignore. What did these organs mean for the future of the galaxy? What would happen when the other species discovered what humans were capable of? The room was filled with a quiet hum as the team worked in silence. The alien assistants were no longer speaking. They were simply observing as the human's body continued to reveal secrets that had been hidden for eons. The surgeon had heard stories about humans, their ability to survive against all odds, their unwillingness to be defeated, but she had never truly understood it until now. Now she saw with her own eyes the power that humanity held within them. Their bodies were not just designed for survival. They were designed for conquest. The surgeon's mind raced as she thought about the implications of her findings. These organs could change everything for the galaxy. She had spent her entire career studying the anatomy of alien species, but this was something entirely different. Humans were not weak. They were not simple. They were an apex species hidden in plain sight, and soon the galaxy would have no choice but to acknowledge their true potential. As the operation continued, The surgeon could not shake the growing feeling of dread that settled over her. She had discovered something that no one had ever suspected, and as she worked to uncover the last of the humans' hidden biology, she realized one undeniable truth. Humans were not just another species, they were a force to be reckoned with, and the galaxy would soon know it. The discoveries continued to pour in, each one more astonishing than the last. The lead surgeon couldn't tear her eyes away from the strange organ systems within the human body. They were evolving right before her, reshaping her entire understanding of life. She had thought it was a fluke when she first discovered the first unexpected organ, but now, with each incision, it became clear this was no accident, no quirk of anatomy. The human wasn't just surviving, it was thriving in ways that no other species, not even the apex predators of the galaxy, could even comprehend. She paused for a moment, considering the implications of what she was seeing. Every organ was interconnected, forming a web of redundancy and strength that no one had ever predicted. As the surgery progressed, the human's body continued to react in ways that were both shocking and fascinating. Each time the surgeon uncovered another layer, another organ, it felt like the human was growing stronger, adapting in real time. No alien had ever seen anything like this before. The tissue she was examining didn't just heal rapidly, it adapted, rewiring itself as if anticipating the surgical tools. It was like the human body was a living, breathing organism, designed to withstand and overcome anything in its path. The surgeon couldn't help but marvel at the intricate beauty of it, but she also felt a cold chill of fear run through her veins. How could something so simple on the outside hide such complexity? The assistants were no longer just watching in silence. Some had taken notes, others had become deeply engrossed in their instruments, trying to replicate the scans they were getting. No matter what they did, no matter how many times they adjusted their tools, the human's body kept surprising them. It wasn't just the organs themselves, but how they functioned. The heart, for example, wasn't just pumping blood. It was circulating a substance that appeared to be more efficient than any known cardiovascular system, capable of delivering oxygen and nutrients at a rate that defied logic. The surgeon's mind raced. Was this natural? Or was this some form of evolution humans had triggered in themselves through sheer willpower, pushed to its absolute limit on their death worlds? She could feel a growing sense of unease building up within her. The human's body seemed almost too perfect, too engineered. The surgeon had worked with species from all over the galaxy, some more advanced than others, but none had ever shown this level of resilience. Some alien species had organs that could regenerate, but none at the speed or efficiency the human exhibited. She'd seen creatures survive fatal injuries, but none of them had the redundancy that this human possessed. His body was like a fortress, layered with defenses that not even their most advanced medical technology could fully understand. Her hands trembled as she worked, feeling the pulse of the human's extraordinary organs beneath her fingers. The human had yet to make a sound, still lying completely still as though aware of the immense discoveries unfolding within him. The surgeon's eyes flicked to the human's face for a brief moment. There was no fear, no panic. He simply laid there, seemingly at peace with everything happening around him. But she knew that he was not unaware. There was a quiet strength in his stillness, a confidence that was growing with each passing moment. This was not the behavior of someone who had been brought into a medical facility for a routine checkup. This human knew exactly what was happening. He knew the significance of what was unfolding. The more the surgeon uncovered, the more she began to question everything she had been taught. No matter how much knowledge she had of alien biology, this was a new frontier. Each organ was more than just an anatomical feature. They were defensive mechanisms, tools for survival and weapons of resilience. She discovered a set of organs that acted as emergency reserves, backup systems that activated only when necessary. These organs had the ability to heal, regenerate, and protect. Even the human skin had an almost imperceptible layer that could adapt to external conditions, shielding against radiation, toxins, and extreme temperatures. The surgeon knew this was no mere coincidence. This human's body had been designed for extreme survival, built to face environments that would break every other species. It was as if the human body had evolved not for normal survival, but for war. Her assistants were now exchanging glances, their previous skepticism all but gone. They had watched the tests, seen the readings, and realized they were witnessing something unprecedented. They could hardly process what they were seeing, yet they couldn't look away. One of them nervously asked the lead surgeon if they should call in more specialists, but the surgeon didn't answer immediately. She wasn't sure what more specialists could offer that their advanced technology hadn't already shown them. The truth was undeniable. Humans were more than they appeared. She had only begun to scratch the surface of their potential, and the thought of the galaxy realizing this terrified her. The human remained still, his heart beating at an unhurried pace, his body showing no sign of distress despite the complex operation taking place. The surgeon realized this was only the beginning. Whatever happened in the coming hours, she knew that this moment would change everything. The galaxy had never seen a species like this before. Humans were not just resilient, they were biologically perfect survivalists, equipped with an arsenal of abilities that could potentially outclass every known species in the universe. As she continued to work, the surgeon felt the weight of her discovery pressing down on her. What would happen when the rest of the galaxy found out about this? Would they welcome humanity as the new apex species, or would they fear what they could become? There was a looming certainty that the truth about humans was about to rock the foundation of everything the galaxy had ever known. And the surgeon, in that moment, understood that this discovery might just be the beginning of something much larger than anyone could possibly imagine. As the hours passed, the surgeon's hands grew more certain and her mind sharper with each passing discovery. The room had transformed from a clinical operating theater to something resembling an archaeological dig, as layers upon layers of the human's biological secrets were uncovered. The more she delved into his anatomy, the more it felt like a forbidden treasure chest opening one intricate marvel after another. Each discovery left her questioning everything she had learned about biology, about evolution, and about survival. The human's body seemed almost impossibly perfect, as if it had been crafted by a force that understood the fragility of life, yet designed to defy it with every fiber of its being. The lead surgeon looked at the glowing holographic scans showing real-time images of the human's organs. She could see now that what she had once believed to be simple had become something far more complex hidden beneath the surface. His organs were not just for survival. They were built for resilience, for rapid adaptation, and they acted in perfect synchrony, as though the entire system had been forged with a single purpose in mind: to endure any environment, no matter how hostile. The human's blood didn't just flow through his veins. It seemed to work as a constant source of repair, constantly healing the cells that were damaged during the operation and even reversing the minor injuries caused by the surgical procedure itself. The surgeon's heart raced as she moved deeper into the body to inspect another layer of the human's hidden anatomy. This organ was unlike any she had ever seen. It seemed to merge seamlessly with the human's spine, yet it didn't follow any of the known structures of other species' central nervous systems. It wasn't just a backup or a redundancy like the other organs. This one was a neural relay center, a central hub designed to enhance reflexes and reactions to immediate threats, almost like an evolutionary safeguard against danger. She quickly realized this organ had the ability to enhance cognitive and motor functions almost instantaneously, boosting the human's reflex speed to a level that no alien species had ever developed. The surgeon swallowed hard as the implications began to sink in. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about power. This was about speed and agility that no other species had even come close to achieving. As her hands trembled, she moved on to the next organ, another impossible discovery tucked deep inside the chest cavity. It was unlike anything she had seen before, and the more she examined it, the more she realized how much she had underestimated the human body. It wasn't just a heart anymore. It wasn't just a pump. It was a living engine designed to provide limitless stamina. The human heart had evolved to a point where it could produce more energy than any other known species could even dream of. The surgeon checked the scans again and again, but each time the data came back the same. The human's body had developed a super-efficient metabolic system that could operate on minimal rest, converting food and air into fuel at an unprecedented rate. That meant humans could fight longer, endure more and survive on far less than any of the so-called advanced species could ever imagine. She looked at her assistants who were standing around the table, stunned into silence. Their instruments had long since been left idle as they watched the surgeon uncover these incredible abilities, one by one. No one spoke now. No one dared to ask questions. The silence of the room had become heavy with disbelief. What they were witnessing was beyond any medical discovery in their history. The human's body was not just a marvel of biology. It was a weapon, a natural-born weapon designed to outlast, defeat, and conquer every challenge placed before it. The surgeon felt a sudden wave of realization crash over her. The galaxy had always been full of stories about apex predator species that ruled the stars, but none had ever come close to the potential of the humans. The human had remained still throughout the operation, not once flinching or reacting to the procedures being performed on him. The surgeon couldn't help but wonder what it was like for him to know the true extent of his own biology, to understand how much more capable he was than any of the species who had ever dared to look down on humanity. His body wasn't just a survivor's tool. It was a weapon against the very forces of nature itself, and she was beginning to feel the weight of that realization pressing heavily on her chest. She couldn't look away from the holographic images as the human's body healed and adapted again before her eyes. The cells were already regenerating, as if they knew what was expected of them. The human wasn't just healing, he was improving, and that improvement seemed limitless. As she continued the surgery, she found herself distracted by a growing fear. What would happen when the rest of the galaxy learned of this? What would happen when the other species learned that humanity was not the fragile species they had all assumed, but a deadly force capable of challenging everything the galaxy had known? She had no answers, only an increasing certainty that whatever happened next, humanity would never again be underestimated. But the true danger was in how the galaxy would react. Would they welcome humans as allies, or would they view them as a threat too great to allow to survive? The surgeon's hands paused over the next incision as she stared at the human's body, now fully revealed to her. The human seemed to sense her hesitation even in his unconscious state. She felt a chill crawl up her spine as she realized the significance of what she had just uncovered. The human wasn't just another species. They were something new. They were a force to be reckoned with, a species whose true potential was yet to be understood, and whose power was waiting to be unleashed on a galaxy that had no idea what was coming. The surgeon's mind was racing as the human's biological secrets continued to unfold before her eyes. Each discovery pushed her deeper into the realization that humanity was far more than just another species in the galaxy. They were a force to be reckoned with. And as she moved to the final stages of the procedure, she couldn't help but feel a gnawing sense of unease. There was a growing tension in the room, a quiet but undeniable shift in the air. The human had not stirred throughout the operation. His body remained still, but every organ, every cell seemed to pulse with an energy that made it clear that he was far from ordinary. There was something in the way he existed in the galaxy, something that could change everything if it were ever truly understood. The surgeons around her were still speechless, their previous doubts and mockery of the human species long forgotten, replaced by respect and fear. But beneath her respect there was fear of her own. The more she discovered about the human, the more she realized that she had underestimated him in ways she could never have imagined. The human body was a machine of survival and endurance, far beyond anything she had seen before. She had studied the anatomy of countless species, from the deadliest to the most fragile, but nothing came close to what was unfolding in front of her. And the more she uncovered, the more she realized that this wasn't just about physical superiority. It was a psychological strength too. The human had an instinctual ability to survive, not just because of his body, but because of his will. The surgeon had heard rumors of humans facing extreme odds and overcoming impossible challenges, but now she was seeing it firsthand. She understood that it wasn't just a survival instinct. It was a fight for dominance, a fight that no other species could match. The assistants had begun to whisper to one another, a murmur that seemed to grow louder with each passing minute. They were frightened by what they had seen. They were frightened by what they had uncovered. because they knew that this discovery could change the galaxy forever. The human wasn't just resilient, he was unstoppable, and now they were beginning to realize that humans were not just another species to be studied or catalogued. They were potential conquerors. They were the apex species not just of Earth but of the galaxy. And it wasn't just their biology that made them dangerous. It was their sheer willpower, their desire to survive that made them a force to be feared. The surgeon had always prided herself on being objective, on seeing every species for what they truly were. But now, as she watched the human's body adapt to the procedure and heal faster than anything she had ever witnessed, she realized she had been wrong. The human was not just another specimen in a lab. Not anymore. The human was a new standard of life, a new force in the universe that would challenge everything she had believed in. She looked down at the data streaming across the surgical table and she realized that this wasn't just about survival. This was about warfare. The human's body had evolved to respond to threats in ways no other species had evolved to do. They didn't just survive. They thrived. They fought. They adapted. And as the surgeon looked at the human, she could see that his body was a weapon, ready to unleash itself on a galaxy that had never seen anything like it before. There was a moment when the human stirred ever so slightly. His eyes flickered open for just a second and met hers. She was taken aback by the calmness in his gaze. It wasn't the look of someone who had just been operated on. It was the look of someone who had been through battles far more intense than anything any of the aliens in the room could ever. Imagine the human wasn't just aware of his biology. He understood it. He was fully aware of his own strength and he knew what he could do. And for a moment the surgeon couldn't help but wonder if the human knew what she was thinking. Did he know that she had just uncovered the most powerful biological weapon in the galaxy? Did he know that the very species she had thought to be weak was now poised to outclass everything in the universe? The silence in the room was heavy as the human's eyes slowly closed again and he drifted back into unconsciousness, his body still healing at an astonishing rate. The surgeon stood still for a long moment, staring down at the patient whose body had become the symbol of everything the galaxy would soon have to face. There was no going back from this. The human was no longer just a species to study. They were a species to fear. She couldn't help but wonder if the galaxy was ready to face what humanity could become, or if they would make the mistake of underestimating them once again. She stepped back from the operating table and turned to her team. They had all been reduced to quiet observers, each of them staring at the human with a mixture of awe and fear. The surgeon knew that this discovery was not just a turning point for their medical field. It was a turning point for the galaxy. The human species had always been dismissed by the rest of the galaxy as weak, as fragile. But now they were learning the truth. They were learning that humanity was not just a species to be ignored. They were a species to be reckoned with. And she could feel the weight of that knowledge pressing down on her. A new age was coming, one where humanity would no longer be the underdog, but the apex predator. As the surgeon turned to leave the operating room, she couldn't help but feel a deep sense of foreboding. The galaxy was about to change forever, and the humans were going to be at the center of it. The surgeon stood at the doorway of the operating room for a long moment, staring at the human lying on the table. His body was now in a state of recovery, but it seemed to be improving in ways that should have been impossible. The data that streamed across the medical instruments was a blur of numbers and measurements far beyond any alien species' capacity to fully comprehend. She had known from the beginning that humans were different, but now she understood the true depth of that difference. She understood that the entire galaxy had been blind to what humanity was capable of, and she could feel the weight of that knowledge settling in her chest like a stone. The human's anatomy was not just a marvel of survival. It was a weapon far more deadly than any of the galaxy's most advanced technologies, and the surgeon knew in her heart that this was just the beginning. The assistants had gathered around the surgical table, their faces filled with a mix of fear and fascination. They were all now in awe of the human before them, and the realization that this species was far more than they had ever given them credit for. They had been wrong about humanity. They had underestimated them. They had looked at humans as primitive, fragile creatures. But now they saw the truth. Humans weren't just resilient. They were apex predators. Their biology was designed for survival, yes, but it was also designed for dominance. Their entire species was built to be the strongest, most adaptable life form in the galaxy. And as the surgeon looked at the unconscious human, she knew that what they had uncovered could change the entire course of galactic history. One of the assistants broke the silence, his voice shaking slightly as he asked the question that everyone had been avoiding. How could humanity have evolved like this? How could a species that had been considered so insignificant by the rest of the galaxy develop a biology so far ahead of every other species? He spoke the words that everyone in the room was afraid to say aloud. What happens now? The surgeon felt the weight of the question press down on her as she turned to face her team. They were all looking to her for answers, but there were no easy answers to be found. The truth was too dangerous, too explosive to be shared freely. The galaxy had always assumed that humanity was a minor species, a curiosity at best. But now they had learned the hard truth that humans were not only capable of surviving the harshest environments in the galaxy, they were capable of thriving. They were capable of evolving at an unimaginable rate. Their biology had been designed not just for survival, but for conquest. The surgeon swallowed hard as she thought about the implications of what they had uncovered. Would the galaxy accept this new reality, or would they try to destroy it before it had the chance to grow? Her mind raced as she considered the far-reaching consequences of the discoveries they had made. If the galaxy learned what humanity was truly capable of, there was no telling how they would react. The species that had once been considered a weak and insignificant force would no longer be ignored. They would be feared. They would be hunted. And if the rest of the galaxy wanted to survive, they would have no choice but to find a way to deal with humanity. But how would they deal with it? Would they try to wipe out humanity before they had a chance to rise? Would they try to enslave them or control them? Or would they accept humanity's power and try to work with them? She couldn't say. She didn't know if anyone could predict what would happen next. The human's body had now fully healed, and the surgeon couldn't help but marvel at how quickly it had recovered. It wasn't just healing at an accelerated rate, it was improving. It was becoming more efficient, more resilient than it had been before. She could see now that the human's body was not just designed to survive, it was designed to conquer whatever challenges came its way. And as she watched the human's chest rise and fall with steady breath, she realized that the galaxy was on the verge of a new era, an era where humanity would no longer be the underdog, but the apex predator. And the surgeon wondered how the other species would react when they finally realized what humans were capable of. Would they resist, or would they accept their new place in the galaxy as the lesser species? She turned back to her team, who were still standing in stunned silence. The weight of the knowledge they had uncovered was too much for any of them to fully grasp. It was as if they had discovered a new form of life, a form of life that was both terrifying and awe-inspiring at the same time. They all knew that humanity could never again be dismissed as insignificant. The truth was out there now, and the universe would soon have no choice but to confront it. The surgeon took one last look at the human as he lay on the table, his body now fully healed, his eyes still closed, but somehow filled with an inner strength that none of them could yet comprehend. The time was coming soon when the rest of the galaxy would have to face humanity for what they truly were. And in that moment, the surgeon realized that whatever happened next would be beyond anything she could control. The galaxy would either fall in line, or it would fight a war it could never win. The surgeon stood alone in the observation room, overlooking the sterile operating table where the human had once lain. The room had gone, quiet now, no longer filled with the usual chatter and banter of her team. Instead, it was filled with the weight of a truth that could not be unlearned. Humanity was no longer the underdog species. It had once been viewed as no longer dismissed as a curiosity to be studied, but a species that would force the galaxy to reckon with its existence. The surgeon took a deep breath, trying to steady her thoughts, but the enormity of what she had uncovered weighed heavily on her mind. She had always considered herself an expert in her field, but she had never encountered anything like this. Before today, she would have never believed it possible that a species so simple on the surface could possess a biology so intricate, so powerful. As the human lay recovering in the medical bay, the surgeon knew that the galaxy would never see them the same way again. The truth about humanity's extraordinary biology was out now, and nothing could change that. She could already imagine the reactions of the Galactic Council and the leaders of the other species who had always seen humans as little more than a curiosity at best, or an insignificant presence in the vastness of the galaxy. At first, they would dismiss the reports as a fluke, as the results of one strange anomaly, but the evidence was undeniable. The human body was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. It had evolved to be a master of survival and adaptation with organs and systems designed to resist, regenerate, and thrive under the harshest conditions known to life. The surgeon's thoughts were interrupted by the soft sound of footsteps behind her. She turned to find one of her assistants standing quietly watching her, his expression unreadable. He had been with her throughout the entire process, observing the discoveries just as she had, and he had seen the shock in her eyes as each new organ was uncovered. Each revelation had shaken him as much as it had shaken her. He now looked at her, as if searching for answers neither of them had the power to give. "What happens now?" the assistant asked, his voice barely a whisper. The surgeon turned back to the observation window, staring at the human who had been reduced to nothing, more than a specimen on a table yet, whose body had become the symbol of everything that was about to change. She could feel the weight of the question pressing down on her, knowing that no answer could truly satisfy it. How could they know what the galaxy would do when faced with a species like this? The reality was harsh. The truth was undeniable. Humanity was a species that could not be ignored any longer. They had been dismissed for too long as weak, fragile, and primitive. Now the galaxy would have to reckon with them. Now they would be forced to confront a species that had evolved to be far more than just survivors. They had evolved to be conquerors. The surgeon knew that the galaxy would not welcome humanity's ascension. They would not celebrate the strength and adaptability that had been hidden for so long. Instead, they would be terrified of it. The galaxy had always seen itself as the apex, the greatest power in existence. But now, humanity's existence had proven that there were still surprises to be found, still secrets hidden in the deepest corners of the universe. "Do we report it?" the assistant asked again, this time with a note of urgency. The surgeon hesitated for a moment, her eyes scanning the room before she finally answered, her voice steady, but filled with a weight that no one could fully comprehend. "We can't," she said. "If we do, the galaxy will destroy them before they even have the chance to rise." The assistant's eyes widened in understanding. He had seen it too. The knowledge of what humanity could become was too dangerous to share with the wider galaxy. It would be met with fear, with attempts to control or destroy humanity, before it could ever pose a real threat. And the surgeon knew that humanity's survival would depend on whether they could stay hidden, long enough to master their own power, to grow stronger without attracting the attention of those who might seek to wipe them out. The decision was made. The surgeon and her team would keep the secret of humanity's extraordinary biology. They would ensure that no one else in the galaxy knew the truth about what humans were capable of. They would be forced to hide in the shadows to wait for the right moment to strike, because she knew that once the galaxy learned what humanity could do, they would either be crushed under the weight of their own potential, or they would rise to take their place at the top of the food chain. The surgeon left the observation room, her mind set on the future. The human species had been underestimated. For far too long they had been dismissed as fragile, weak creatures, but now they were a force the galaxy would have to reckon with. Soon enough, humanity would rise up and show the galaxy what it had been blind to for so long. No longer would they be the prey of the galaxy's apex predators. They would become the apex themselves, and when the galaxy finally realized it, it would be too late. The surgeon walked out of the medical bay, her mind racing with the implications of what she had just witnessed. She couldn't help but feel a sense of awe and fear at the same time. She knew that humanity would change everything, and she knew that whatever happened next, it would be the dawn of a new era in the galaxy. One where humanity would no longer be the underdog, but the predator. The end of an era had come, and the beginning of another was only just beginning. As the surgeon walked away from the medical bay, her mind was filled with a storm of thoughts. The secret they had uncovered about humanity was too great to bear. It was something the galaxy would never have anticipated, something that would force every species in the universe to rethink everything they had believed about survival and strength. The human species had long been dismissed as weak, but now she understood the terrible truth. Humans were not only survivors, they were destined to become the apex species of the galaxy. Their biology was a weapon of unimaginable potential, and as she reflected on the vastness of what she had just witnessed, she knew that this was no longer just a matter of biology. This was a matter of power. A power that could change the course of the galaxy forever. She thought back to the moment when she had first laid eyes on the human, when she had seen the calm confidence in his gaze. It had been subtle then, but now it was undeniable. He had known something that she hadn't known then. He had known his worth, and in his silence he had revealed a strength that no one could have predicted. The surgeon had spent her life studying species from every corner of the galaxy, but nothing had prepared her for the reality of humanity's true potential. She understood now that it was not just their body that made them dangerous. It was their will. It was their ability to adapt to any challenge, no matter how overwhelming, and it was their relentless drive to survive that set them apart from every other species. The surgeon knew she had to keep the secret hidden. She had to protect humanity from the inevitable fear and distrust that would come if the rest of the galaxy knew what humanity was capable of. The truth could not be allowed to spread, yet there were too many risks, too many forces in the galaxy that would move against humanity to destroy it before it could ever rise. The surgeon made a silent vow to herself that she would protect the human species at all costs. She would keep their secret safe until humanity was ready to stand on its own, until they were ready to claim their place. At the top of the galaxy, as the surgeon walked through the halls of the medical facility, the whispers of her team followed her, but she didn't care. They had seen what she had seen. They knew the truth and they were bound by it. They would keep the secret too. For now, they would remain silent. Their role in this was over, but the future was just beginning. Outside the medical facility, the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the landscape. The surgeon stood for a moment at the window, watching as the stars began to appear in the sky. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders, but she knew that soon everything would change. The balance of power was about to shift, and humanity would be at the center of it all. She could already imagine the other species scrambling to adjust to this new reality. But by then, it would be too late. Humanity would have already risen to claim their place at the top of the food chain. The surgeon smiled softly to herself as she turned away from the window. She knew that in the coming years, humanity would become the most powerful species in the galaxy, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. The galaxy would have to come to terms with the new order, and they would learn to respect humanity or be swept aside. As she walked down the hall, she could feel the weight of the truth in her every step. Humanity was not the underdog anymore. They were the predators of the galaxy, and the universe would soon know it. She had seen it with her own eyes, and she would make sure that humanity's secrets remained hidden until the time was right, until they were ready to show the galaxy their true power. The surgeon knew that the future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Humanity had proven itself to be a force like no other, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The end.